What's up, Spellslingers? My name is Garion John Wells.
I'm Drew Flitton.
And I'm Cory Janibagian.
And this
is Untap
Upkeep.
Drink.
Beer up. Hey guys, we're back with another episode of Untap Upkeep Drink, and today we're talking about basic deck archetypes in Magic: The Gathering.
So the idea is that there's a lot of new players that are listening that we've realized after a few episodes here, and we kind of want to break down what it is that people talk about when they talk about control or aggro or whatever, because we've mentioned it several times already.
Yeah, when you're more ingrained, you say all sorts of weird words and nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. So
yeah, we were literally just having a conversation upstairs where somebody was playing a game and they were talking about all these weird things going on. It's just like, is this what it's like to be someone outside of Magic when somebody's talking about like, oh, I've got my Azuri, Renegade leader, I've got such and such, and just like, what? You're saying words that are technically English, I think.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Terrence about this the other day, and I was like, Untap is just, it's a made-up word. Like, it doesn't exist outside of Magic. I was like, why was this even a thing? But yeah, there's just a lot of weird jargon.
As always, before we get into the episode, we got a couple beers here. So, once again, I brought some beers from Oregon. I went on a trip many months ago, probably at this point, and I've been holding on to these. It's been a trial for me just because a lot of them just look really, really good. Some of them I've had and know are really good. So the first one we got is Deschutes from Deschutes. Deschutes is one of my favorite breweries, Cory. You can attest to that. They're just a classic, good brewery.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people have heard of Deschutes, the brewery, but this beer is literally called Deschutes.
Yeah, it's D-A and then shoots with a Z.
Yeah. It doesn't look like a Deschutes beer because they usually have their big logo on it, because this can is just super flowery. There's a little bear creeping out. It's a really cool can. And then I've actually had this beer before as well. And so this is an American Pilsner, 25 IBUs. And then we got the Utah. No, wait, this is, you got this in Oregon.
Yeah.
So it's only 4%. I'm used to those Utah beers.
It's an easy drinker from Oregon. You'll see that kind of all of the beers we have today are just nice, easy drinkers.
So, like Drew was saying, Deschutes is one of our favorite breweries. It's just up in Bend, a good little spot. We like a lot of their beers.
How's that hit your tongue?
It's way better than the Utah version.
Yeah, it's a very,
all
very
the flavor is back.
Yeah, so I grabbed this one because Cory's a big fan of Pilsners. Generally speaking, try and get him when I can. Garion, you've not tried this one.
I've not.
So I had this one on tap, and it was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I like a lot of the lighter side of beers, like Pilsners and Lagers and Hefeweizens. And this one is it's just right there.
Clean, no hops at all.
No, it's just
big fan of that.
Drinking.
It's got
super crisp.
Yeah, crisp. It's got like a light sweetness to it. It's really enjoyable. The next beer we have is the Coanda Pre-Prohibition Cream Ale from
Pelican Brewing. Yep. It's 5.4% alcohol by volume, 25 IBU. So it's also pretty easy down.
Easy drinking. And so the reason why I grabbed this one was because Garion's not really into the hoppy side of things. And the guy that I was visiting, or one of the guys I was visiting over in Oregon, this was his go-to beer. And he hates IPAs and all that other stuff. And so living on the Oregon coast is kind of like rough for him because there's not really that many beers that he can enjoy.
You're like, if you enjoy this, I trust you.
So when he told me that, we literally just got a six-pack of it immediately. And that was what we were drinking for the rest of the trip that I had. That was our dinner beer. It was just a nice, perfectly fine cream ale. It's not overly obtrusive in any way.
No, there's almost no hop character, even though it is slightly bitter. It's not that piney bitter.
Yeah, and the malts are very, very nice in it.
Yeah. The cream, I mean, I kind of just go in from the Deschutes. It's more of a texture thing than a flavor, obviously.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't had this one before, but
that one's
really
good.
Nice.
Yeah.
And they've got their nice little story on here.
Coanda Cream Ale celebrates Cape Coanda, the starting point of the stunning Three Capes scenic route and the birthplace of Pelican Brewing Company. Inspired by one of America's traditional 19th century beer styles, Coanda has a golden color, floral aroma, refreshing body, and a clean, snappy finish, to which I agree. Whether enjoyed with your toes in the sand at our oceanfront brew pub or in your own backyard, Coanda Cream Ale is proof that light-colored beer can be both refreshing and inspiring.
I want to go to an oceanfront brew
that's
pub.
the only thing.
They're a little bit away from it. I went into the brewery, and of the, I think, 8 beers that I tried, maybe it was 12, more than half of them were IPAs or derivatives. And goddamn, when they talk about hop-focused beers or hop-central beers or whatever the term is, they kicked me in the teeth so hard.
Yeah.
I was so burnt out. My taste buds were fried
That's
by the
straight
end.
from the source, hipster central.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the beers were fine. They weren't bad, but this one, I think, is honestly Pelican's best beer.
Yeah,
It's delicious.
I've had a couple other Pelican beers, and they've been okay, but this one,
Yeah,
this one's
all of
pretty
their
good.
beers are fine. Like, totally, and if you like hops, probably better than that. But this one is just a good, solid go-to beer. If you're not, into hops, or you just want to try a new brewery, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, for sure.
The last one I got is the Ninkasi Brewing Company Vanilla Otis Oatmeal Stout.
Praise the goddess.
So this one I was super pumped for. They're out of Eugene, so I didn't actually get to visit the brewery itself, but I was super excited to just see this beer because the label looks fantastic. I love oatmeal stouts. I love stouts in general, as you guys know. And so this was just one that I was keen to dive into. Oh, that's nice. That's like dark chocolate incarnate into this beer right now.
I'm
that
ready.
Vanilla note is just, I think the vanilla note hits you both immediately and as like the aftertaste, which is
It's
beautiful.
just on both ends.
Yeah, it's lovely.
There's no vanilla on the nose.
So it's a 7% by volume, and IBU's 50, and you can definitely tell.
Yeah, it's very bitter. Obviously, like we've said with
I
stouts,
mean, compared
it's
to what we
not,
had here.
Yeah, it's not the piney bitter. It's that nice coffee bitter. I didn't get as much vanilla as I thought, but it was good.
Oh, I got it coming in going, and the aftertaste right now is just lingering on coffee.
What'd you say the ABV was?
7%.
Okay, I was going to
Not
say
as
it
big as
doesn't.
some of the other stouts.
It doesn't feel as thick as some. Some
Yeah,
stouts
it's
do.
definitely a little lighter than some of the other stouts we've had, but I agree. It's vanilla, and then it just sort of goes into sort of chocolatey, and then vanilla again, and then it just fades out into coffee.
Yeah, this is
It's super good.
a fucking good beer. So, Cory, you're familiar with Ninkasi more than I am.
Yeah, I've had a lot of their beers way back in the day when I was first getting into beers and didn't know what I was doing, just trying everything. So I actually haven't had a Ninkasi beer in probably like 4 years or something, but I think I might need to jump back in because that one was delicious.
All right, guys, now that we've all got our beer in hand, we're talking about archetypes. And I'll admit, a lot of my play style, especially when I was younger, was very linear, just whatever cards we had. We didn't really know play style other than probably one that we'll talk about as tribal. You know what I mean? You just find your favorite type of creature. All right, I'm playing zombies. Let's jam as many zombies as we have in the box. We're going for it. But there's a lot of different ways that you can get these decks to interact. And so we want to shed some light on all the different things you can do.
All right, so first and foremost, we have to talk about what are archetypes, right? We're using this word over and over again, and we should just define it.
So archetypes are basically a group of strategies that you just move into more general categories and ideas. And so like Garion was saying, tribal would be a subcategory in one of these archetypes, such as aggro, control, mid-range, there's tempo, there's combo, there's a bunch of different ones, and then there's also sub-themes for each of those as well.
Right. So these are like the bigger, more I don't want to say easy groupings, but sort of the main groupings of the
These are like
archetypes we
the
have.
overarching
Yeah.
and idealistic examples of the strategy. It's like the most general that we can really make them without just saying you're playing Magic.
Yeah, it's just like, what are you playing? I'm playing aggro.
Yeah.
Boom, somebody immediately knows what you're talking about.
Yeah. So let's talk about the extremes. For I think a lot of deck builders, they kind of understand that there are the two polar opposites, right? You've got aggro and you've got control. So for aggro, we'll say this time and time again, it's kind of the most basic of basics in MTG, right? It's what you should start new players on just because it's simple to understand and it's so linear in what it wants to do, right? You want to play creatures to attack your opponents. You want to play spells to pump them or force through damage, giving them evasion, things like that. And for burn and just mono red decks specifically, you play burn spells to remove opponent's creatures or to hit your opponent's life total directly.
Unsurprisingly, aggro stands for aggressive.
Yeah.
So we're just going straight to the face as often as possible.
In aggro, you're counting to 20.
Yep.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, you just go all the time. You don't care. Okay. So a couple of the deck ideas for aggro include, like Drew was saying, burn decks, where you play fast, low CMC, hasty guys and just get in for damage.
Yeah, we got RDW with that. Red deck wins.
Yeah. And then there's also sort of the other side, which is mono green Stompy, which is you ramp a bunch and then you just play giant dudes and trample through.
The biggest shit you can get.
Yeah.
It's kind of a slower part of it, but it still follows the same category of just trying to counter to win, try and get in, swing with your creatures.
You're worried less about what your opponent is doing and just trying to get damage in.
Yeah. And then another big one is just token strategies. Just go wide, just go hard.
Yeah, you'll rarely see that tokens are in like any control style category. I mean, they often will probably be in mid-range as well, but I think that a lot of token strategies care more about just getting your tokens up, pumping them, and swinging.
Yeah.
So I'd definitely classify most token strategies in the aggro category.
Now, on the opposite end of aggro, we've got control, which is basically idealistically opposite. Instead of worrying about your board state and how do I get in as much damage as possible, you're very carefully watching what your opponent is doing and trying to counter and reciprocate moves to control what they do. That's why we call it control. You're genuinely trying to control the board and the board state. So you allow what happens in the game. That's basically the overarching theme of your strategy.
Yeah, any good control player understands that there's one important thing to know about control and playing Magic, and that is there's only one life point from your life total that matters, and that's the last one.
Yep.
But with that, you know, you need to be able to protect your life total until you can establish a threat or a specific win con, right? And you do that through counter spells, removal spells, defensive creatures, and then you have to be able to get a way to win.
Yeah, and I think just like this whole strategy is the opposite of aggro. I think new players should never play control.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you have to know so much about the game and when to do stuff, what threats to remove, what threats to allow.
Control is awesome because there are an infinite number of decisions that you can make, but making the correct one is so very difficult that you can just fuck up once and
you lose 3 turns later because of that one move.
And
in aggro,
but it's just...
Yeah, I mean, in aggro, your decisions are how can I get as much damage to my opponent as possible, as quickly as possible. Whereas in control, you're trying to figure out which one is the one that's going to put you over the edge before you can establish your board.
Yeah, so some of the common decks for control are just mono blue counter spells. You just... If your opponent can't play any spells, then eventually you'll get there.
Yeah,
you can win.
Basically you're trying to just hold up mana, stop their threat, stop their everything.
Yeah.
And then you land, like, I think the old one is just like Leviathans and things like that. The mono blues, giant creatures,
boys.
Frost Titan, things like that, where you're just going to win eventually because they can't do anything. And you get to 8 mana and you cast one of those and you can still hold up mana for a counterspell in case they have removal. And, I mean, you win. It just takes a long time, but it's control to the core.
Yeah, another one that was really prevalent back in the day was blue-white approach. And so this uses the card Approach of the Second Sun, which basically means if you cast it twice, you win the game automatically. You don't have to do anything else. You just cast it twice.
Yeah, and so with Approach of the Second Sun, it was nice because it had life gain attached to it.
Yeah.
And the deck was using a lot of, counterspells and removal in white to just get to this spell. And then it would gain life off of it, so it kind of gives it a buffer before it can do it again. And it would put the spell 7th from the top.
Yeah.
But if you're running 4 of these, you're more likely to hit it a second time. Or if you're just drawing a bunch of spells, which is what the deck wanted to do, then it's easy to get to it a second time. It's just a matter of controlling the board until that happens.
Yeah, I played against this deck archetype a lot, and it's, like Drew was saying, it's just you remove everything that your opponent has, and then you play draw spells to get Approach another time. You don't care how much life you lose or how much you're attacked because you just gain it back, and then just cast it again, and boom, you're done.
Last life point, only one that matters.
Exactly. So another one that was really common was Teferi Nexus.
Yeah, so this one was really popular on Arena for a time period. It was basically just like the premier deck because if you can get to Nexus, you just chain off. And so you're trying to get, again, counterspells and removal until you can get to Ultimate Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, which basically his ultimate reads that whenever you draw a card, you exile a permanent your opponent controls. And so you use Nexus of Fate, which is an extra turn spell that gets shuffled back into your library, and you chain these over and over again until you mill your opponents out, essentially, because you're going to start exiling everything that they control, including their lands, so they can't do anything. And most people, after Teferi ults and they see the Nexus for the first time, realize what's going to happen, they just concede.
Yeah.
But getting to that point is so frustrating. It takes a long time.
Yeah, so one thing you might notice from these past 3 decks is that they're either mono blue or blue white.
Yep.
And so those are sort of the control colors. If anybody says Azorius or just
Dimir
they're playing
as
control,
well.
yeah. Dimir's a lot of
So black, blue, black, white, Esper, those 3 colors together.
yeah.
And I don't play blue as much as I should. And every time I sit down with an Azorius player, I'm just son of a bitch. I'm going to play nothing today.
Yeah. And then there's this kind of last category of control that I don't think a lot of people think of as control, just because it seems to operate in a different realm entirely.
And it looks different.
Yeah.
It feels different.
Yeah, it's not like a straight up deck archetype. It's just something that most control decks just do.
So we got resource denial, right?
Yeah.
That counts as land destructions, right? Your opponents can't win if they don't have mana to play spells. If they don't have lands, they can't play the game. We've got hand attack, right? Your opponent can't win if they never have spells in their hand to cast.
Yeah, and so a lot of the Dimir and Esper control
got
uses
good hand
mono
attack
black
in there.
hand attack and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then you've got stacks, which
It's gross.
is basically, again, you're trying to stop your opponents from being able to play the game.
Yeah,
And then prison, which you're trying to stop your opponents from being able to attack you. And you put attacks on those attacks so that even if they are attacking, you got one creature that's coming in and it's not going to threaten your life total until you can get to some sort of win con.
Yeah, and those last 2 strategies, you're basically just locking the game down and slowing it down until you can just get to your win con. And they're not very fun to play against.
They're very slow.
All right, the next couple we're going to talk about here are the in-betweeners. We've got elements of both control and aggro inside of these. We've got mid-range and we've got tempo.
So mid-range, you sort of play the control and aggro role depending on who you're matched up against.
And the cards that you draw in your opening set.
Yeah, and
dictate that.
Yeah, exactly what you have first. But it's basically like being able to use the best of both elements in any given situation to give you the best advantage in your game. So you're using high power level cards for maximum impact every time you cast a spell.
Yeah, we're talking about just the most efficient creatures, the best creatures that you can get.
Planeswalkers.
Powerful planeswalkers.
Yeah.
They can control a board on their own, so put them in.
Yeah, you got a lot of really, really good, efficient removal, and obviously hand attack, which is sort of like removal, but just in a different way.
Yeah, mid-range doesn't always focus on just removal because there are some threats that you can't remove, whether they're hexproof or whatever, and so having hand attack as in your sideboard or just in your main deck to get rid of the threats that you can't answer is a really good way to go about that.
Yeah, mid-range it's a very, very flexible sort of archetype you can mess around with because it can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, most of the decks I think that people are familiar with are probably going to be in the mid-range category just because you're trying to just play the best that you can.
Yeah.
Best of everything.
But I think it's important to look at your mid-range deck as a mid-range deck instead of thinking of it as, oh, well, it's a deck. It's not super fast and it's not really control. Thinking of it in that way, knowing if I'm up against a fast deck, the way that my deck is going to win is by slowing them down, right? Versus going against a slower deck, I don't want to go to long game with this guy. I need to get in there as fast as possible. Thinking of the deck you're playing in those terms really helps the way that you play each matchup.
Yeah, and so we've got some common deck ideas here. There's just decks that you see around. You've got the Rock, which is a black-green focused deck, including cards like Tarmogoyf, Scavenging Ooze, Fatal Push, like just cards that we know are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Accrue value over longer games. Like there's a lot of good elements to these cards.
And they have a good amount of flexibility for different situations.
Yeah, they can come down early and do work, or you can play them late and also do some work.
Yeah, and then we've got the Jund or Obzon decks. Same idea as the Rock, basically, but we're using red in Jund or white in Obzon for removal. Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt, these really strong, powerful, low-drop removal spells just to make sure that we can secure our victory.
Yeah, I think a lot of what makes these types of the more control elements really powerful is using, like you said, Path to Exile and things like that. They're 1 mana. So you're trading up with every single, or you're trying to trade up with every single threat. Someone spends 5 mana on a big fat creature. You only have to spend 1 to get rid of it.
Yeah, and when you're playing against control, them trying to answer your 1 mana removal spell with, 2, 3, 5 mana counterspell, whatever happens to be, is making them make decisions that are a lot more difficult because of the mana intensive spells that they're playing versus what you're using. Speaking of mana intensive, we got Tron. I really think that Tron kind of falls into the mid-range strategy because it's not really an aggressive strategy. You're using these powerful planeswalkers, usually Ugin, Karn, these colorless planeswalkers, or I've seen recently we've got like the mono black, quote unquote mono black, because it's mostly colorless, Eldrazi decks, and those ones again, you're trying to use these Tron lands, which are from the Urza block, where if you have each of them, they tap for 2, 2, or 3 mana, and so you can just ramp out massive creatures and just these colorless threats that are difficult to answer.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with that much mana, just going so fast, just getting all these crazy big things out.
Yeah, turn 3, 6 mana is a lot.
Stupid.
Yeah, to get Garion and Ugin turn 3 or turn 4, like you start to lock your opponent out of the game with an 8 mana Planeswalker very quickly, and it's difficult to answer. One of my favorite archetypes, probably just my favorite archetype, Aristocrats, is more in the mid-range category. You've got these really efficient creatures that have a lot of value tacked onto them, and you're just going to continually get value off these creatures as the game goes on. You're using really strong Planeswalkers in there as well, and has some of the best hand attack and removal in those colors. It usually is in Mardu.
Yeah.
And so you've got red, black, and white. You've got all of the removal.
All the removal.
So you have your pick of the litter, basically. We've got Dredge, which just an archetype itself that is very, very strong. Black, green, and recently there's been a little bit of a red splash into it, which is kind of cool. But again, talking about very good creatures, very good removal, and just the fact that you can recur your deck over and over again just gives it that resiliency that it needs.
Yeah, you just keep getting value over and over, just putting things in your graveyard and taking them back out, and then just
that's probably the most quintessential word for mid-range is value.
Yeah.
Talking about value, we've got like some Christian stuff in there, right? Birthing Pod is just a good mid-range value deck. Generally, it's not what I would call a combo deck because it takes a long time to get there, and it really does just want to accrue massive amounts of value over the game and then win after a few turns, not rather than just like immediately.
Yeah, you're just building up and up and up with Birthing Pod.
Then on the flip side of sort of these middle of the road archetypes, we've got a tempo deck, which in a lot of ways is very similar to a mid-range, but it sort of functions opposite. The way I kind of look at it is that mid-range in general wants to go longer unless they're up against some type of deck that they know they can't hit the long game, whereas tempo tends to, in their games, we have this phrase, protect the president, right? You're trying to land a very efficient threat early and then use your control to keep him on board and keep your opponents away from it so that you can try to keep it on.
Steady damage.
Yeah, it is consistent, steady damage, and that's really what it is, right? You want to land an early game threat and protect it through the use of counters and control elements, bounce spells, etc. And by playing these cheap threats, it allows you to play more of them if you need to, while also holding up counter magic and protection spells. So realistically, you're just trying to chip away at your opponent's life total over many, many turns, and you're trying to operate, for the most part, at instant speed for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's basically you're attacking, and then if they try and do something, then you respond to that and protect your dude, and then just keep doing that every turn, just getting that damage in no matter what.
Yeah, and then also tacked onto that are often draw engines because you can only counter so many things so many times before you need to draw more cards.
Yeah.
And those are incredibly powerful to make sure that you always have an answer, right? And so we look at decks, we're talking about mono blue tempo. So Autumn Burchett won the Mythic Championship. I think it was the first Mythic Championship, playing a mono blue tempo deck against, I think it was Esper Control. And the way that they sequenced spells was incredibly important to win the match because you play a 1 mana, basically an unblockable Merfolk, and then using things like Curious Obsession to make sure that you're increasing the power level of the creature while also getting draws every single time it hits your opponent, and then protecting it throughout. And one of the cards that was really pivotal in the match was Dive Down, which gives your creature +0/+3 and hexproof, which the hexproof is the important part, right? Like you don't care about the toughness, but for 1 mana, making sure that you just bounce whatever removal spell that they just threw out.
So we've got the mono blue tempo deck. We've got blink strategies, which is basically being able to bring out your threats that have some sort of ETB, some sort of value on their own, and then being able to recur that ETB by...
Or just get rid of the threats that your opponents have.
Yeah.
Making them recast it is sometimes just as good as a counterspell.
Yeah, especially when a lot of those blink cards are a lot more cost-efficient mana-wise than the threats that they're deploying.
Yeah.
To spend 1-2 mana to bounce their thing is invaluable to the 2 or 3 damage that you need to get in.
Yeah, and that's just another idea that you're setting the tempo. Like they're using their turn, and you're just basically putting them back a turn while you're still going.
Absolutely. And the last one that I have on here is kind of like, I don't know if it's necessarily in the tempo, just because you're not protecting your creature in the same way. But that's the Boggles or Bogles or however else you want to say it. But For those who play EDH, it's the Voltron strategy. You're shooting up one creature, making it big, and basically just punching in for damage as fast and as hard as possible, as often as realistically you can. And you're giving it protection via your enchantments rather than the spells that you're using. And I don't think the Bogles decks usually use counterspells at all. I think it's just like
they kind of protect themselves.
Yeah.
Hexproof and Shroud.
Hexproof.
Indestructible.
Usually not Shroud. Usually it's Hexproof and then the Totem Armor.
I think that's why Voltron is a lot harder in EDH from a tempo standpoint, because instead of protecting it from one person, you have to protect it from 3 people. And it's much harder to sort of set this tempo and keep answers up on 3 people's turns as opposed to just one person's turn.
Well, and I know it's not exactly 120 damage, but when you suit up a Voltron creature and you basically announce to the table in EDH that this guy's going to smack people for commander damage, you now turn the table to 3-1, and so you have to be able to do 3 players lethal damage instead of just the one. But it's literally like the exact opposite of token go wide. You're going one creature and making him as large as possible as quickly as you can,
and then just doing everything you can to make sure that they survive, to make sure that damage goes through.
Yeah.
All right, so those are like I would say the primary 4, the Fab 4. And then we got the
weird ones.
I was gonna say like the redheaded stepchild, but I think those are more loved than what the combo players are in a lot of communities.
Yeah, I think on these last ones, you either love them and embrace it 100%, or you just absolutely hate it.
So this is kind of like, we have to think outside the box. They're neither aggro nor control. They kind of do what they want, but also they can be inside the box and they can be aggro or control.
Yeah, they're kind of their own weird little thing. Like, you can have strategies with combo or mill in other decks doing other things, but they're also just their own thing on their own.
Yeah. So when we get into combo, and this is something that I have to define over and over again to people, is that when I'm talking about combo, I'm talking that you need to assemble your pieces to win in one turn. You need to knock your opponent out in one turn. Right.
My Flash Hulk combo.
Yeah, a lot of people think about combo as like you have,
like an infinite
loop or whatever. But to me, that is a combo, but that is not a combo deck. Your deck needs to be able to win in one turn. And so you need to be able to protect or recur those combo pieces in formats where you're allowed to have more than one of cards. It's a lot easier. Otherwise, you need tutors and things like that. And so decks, especially in things like Highlander, EDH, etc., they use these tutor effects so that you have a higher likelihood of arranging your combo pieces. And then you also have like redundant pieces to make sure that even if they get destroyed, you can't use them anymore, exiled, whatever, that you can still get your combo off. But then we have my favorite combo, which, as I'm sure I've said time and time again, is Storm. I love Storm. I think the Storm is my second favorite archetype. I think that it's
a cool ass mechanic, man.
It's so cool.
It's fun as hell.
The idea is that you just play lots of spells in one turn to generate a high enough storm count. I got this in quotes, storm count, because that's just what we call it, because we don't really have a way to represent it in game sense. And once you have your high enough storm count, which is the number of spells you've played, you can kill your opponent with just one last spell, whether that be Grape Shot, Tendrils of Agony, Brain Freeze. Then there's other, janky stuff. You've got Tinker, which is banned in a lot of formats, or limited, I think, in Legacy, which combos with things like Blightsteel Colossus or other just giant artifact creatures. One-shot Robot, probably part of a combo in a lot of places. We've got Flash Hulk, which Garion has in one of his decks.
Sick.
So you're using Flash and Protean Hulk, which allows you to tutor out a bunch of creatures.
Yep. You have to have the right pieces, but once you get them, you're ready to win.
That is combo in a nutshell.
Yep.
We've got the lands.
Merit
Lodge. Using things like Primeval Titan or some other source to get Dark Depths and Thespian Stage out, so that your Thespian Stage copies your Dark Depths, but it loses the ice counter, so it immediately becomes a 20/20 indestructible trample that you're going to kill your opponent with.
Good fucking luck.
And then we have the kind of lesser category, just because I don't think a lot of people think about it as combo, and that's creature combo. I think the most popular one that people know about is Elf Ball, and I call this combo because of what it is trying to do. It is trying to assemble a bunch of little elves, generate a shitload of mana, get Crater Hoof Behemoth out, and just kill someone in one turn, one swipe, one hit, one kill.
Yeah, and so a lot of these just combo decks that we've talked about, they're usually for modern or standard or the one-on-one formats. And like when you think of EDH combos, you got to think of a lot of different other strategies, because playing one 20/20 indestructibles isn't going to kill anybody. Or
it's going to do it slowly if it does.
Or cheating out of Blightsteel. Like you got to sort of enlarge it a lot. Like by doing Storm really works in EDH because you can just keep that Storm count high, but you have to do sort of infinite combos in EDH just to accrue enough damage or mill
or mana or whatever else
or
is out
things
there,
like
right?
that. Just like
because you have so many opponents.
And
yeah,
so
because
you'll
instead
see-
of just doing 20, you have to do it to each.
Yeah. And so you'll see in a lot of EDH strategies that are looking at combo is that there's either ways that just say you win the game or ways that, you know, like you can just basically do infinite
Each
damage.
opponent.
Yeah. A lot of EDH combos are just like, I'm going to do an arbitrary amount. I'm going to make 10,000 goblins
Yeah.
with haste. It's like, okay,
So
got
says
it.
Grango. Well, that's where you see in EDH a lot of these cards that say target player being swapped for each opponent.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to get a big storm count and say, okay, I deal 55 damage to target player, but you still have 2 opponents. You've wasted all your resources, and now you're ready to lose the game because you haven't dealt with everyone.
Which is why, as Cory was saying, the arbitrarily high count for Storm is such an important thing because counting to, 11 is generally what you need in a normal heads-up game of 20 life.
Yeah.
Looking at, like, Tendrils of Agony, 11 is usually what I need to get in order to have my Tendrils of Agony kill somebody. Brain Freeze, I probably need to count to, I think it's 20 to get all 60 of their cards. Grape Shot only deals 1 damage, so I need a high Storm count for that. Usually, it's like 18 if they have fetch lands out, and I haven't touched them at all yet.
Yeah.
And so, with these Storm cards, the nice thing is that you can redistribute each copy of the spell that it has to each opponent, and that helps you a long ways in the Storm. But when it comes to things like the creature combo decks, Elf Ball, you need to have a lot of creatures out in order to make that swing count.
Yeah, you essentially need to make your combo at least 3 times as big when doing these sort of just one-time only combo decks.
And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, and that is the mill strategies. And that's kind of the other side of this combo. And mill in EDH is basically always going to be combo because it's so difficult to just mill people out when they have 100 cards and you have 4 players.
4 players, yeah.
It's just difficult. It's often more associated with control strategies, but not always, just because you need to protect your pieces. And to mill somebody out is... It's honestly just difficult in a 60-card game, let alone a 100-card game.
It's like a slow motion combo.
Yeah.
Because you have your pieces, but they're not going to win in one turn. They're going to win over that long game.
Yeah, so that's why,
keep them online.
I separate mill from combo, is because it doesn't usually win immediately in one turn.
I agree with that.
And so basically what mill is you want to get your opponent's library into their graveyard. Put the top 2 cards, whatever it happens to be, over and over again until you mill them out. And the reason why it's called mill is because of the millstone, which was, I think, just the first card that really milled creatures.
Yeah, there were probably weird cards, but that's where people were like, okay, this is a strategy. This is viable.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you had 4 of them back then. 4 of those on the battlefield.
And so you, like Garion was saying, is that you need these very specific cards to actually get it working at all. Like mill is honestly a very difficult archetype to work with, just because if you don't have all of your pieces assembled, kind of like what combo players need, it's just going to take forever, and they're probably just going to clock you because you're not playing a bunch of creatures that are going to help you. You're playing enchantments, artifacts, these weird cards that aren't ever seen in any other deck because they don't really serve a purpose if you're not trying to mill somebody out.
Or if you are playing creatures, there are some, but you're not using them in a traditional way. You're not swinging with them. You're tapping them for their effect of milling your opponents,
or just like stopping your life total from going to 0.
Yeah, they're just like blockers or incidental value.
Yeah, you block and then you tap them to mill something. It's like, I'll get you for 5 here, but you're hitting me for 20.
Yeah, mills, it's a really hard strategy, like Drew was saying, because there's just people don't like it. First off,
when you put all it's weird that people respond so much more favorably to like removal and board wipes than they do to mill.
Yeah, like if you actually get to cast your shit and someone counters it or kills it, you go, oh, damn it, you got me. But if someone mills your favorite thing, you son of a bitch.
I never even had a chance to see how it works. Yeah. And so mill is often better in limited environments because they have smaller decks. If you can, I say
less ways to deal with that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say limited environments, I really just mean draft, because getting a limited sealed pool,
you have to get the dream.
Like,
I mean, we've heard that there's going to be some fairies in the upcoming October set, right?
Is that true?
That's what they said. I don't think it's going to be all fairies, but there's going to be support for Una.
As Cory always says, you're making me
You're making
I'm excited.
Dude, fucking fairies. Oh, man. But as I said, this is often seen as a combo strategy, especially in EDH. I have a mill deck. I will say this, and I hope that it'll soon be featured on the episode so I can actually break down what the deck is and why I chose the decisions that I chose to make it work. But it had to be a mill deck because every single
just
iteration,
reveal your commander. Just at least tell people where we're going with this.
No, they'll get it when they get it. But every single iteration of the deck, and I went through 5 or 6 iterations of the deck trying to make this mill strategy work, and it was never fast enough to matter. Every single iteration of the deck, I could maybe get one person to mill out, and that's only if I'm focusing solely on that opponent, and that's limited amount of creatures, maximum amount of mill. And there's 3 other players that I have to contend with, and if I can only deal with one, I'm pissing them straight the fuck off.
Oh yeah,
and
very
everyone else is
like
either like,
Infect.
yeah, it's like I don't care about the rest of you, and maybe you don't care about me, but you might incidentally have to swing at me for whatever reason, and my life total starts to tick down fast if I don't have ways to protect it. And the mill deck is all about just going hard into the mill.
Yeah, it's kind of like burn strategies in EDH where you have to focus on one person straight from the get-go, or just assemble your combo and get everybody right out the gate.
Yeah.
So, and there's a couple just sort of one-shot combos with mill, but people see them coming from a ways away.
Yeah, and I as far as like the mill goes, like you can definitely see when I like start to assemble the pieces.
Yeah.
But I've discovered on accident when I was just going through hands on the deck that I have a turn 2 win con.
Ooh.
And that's definitely like if I ever get it off, it's the god hand.
God hand. Well, you play Storm frequently, or to some effect.
I used to play
I want to
like
know
most.
how advertised. It seems like it wouldn't be advertised because you're not going to play the Storm card until your count's high, but you kind of have to start counting your spells.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't just, I mean, you have to count it on something on a dice or on something, and someone's going to ask you, what the hell are you counting for? Do you feel like it's advertised the same way that mill is?
100% advertised. Like the thing that I always use is because I like to splash white for a card that allows me to stop any of my spells from being countered. It just stops your opponents it stops your opponents from counting from playing spells on your turn.
Oh, yeah,
and so that's my bait card. If they have counter spells, they need to counter that right now, or I'm going to storm off. Right? And sometimes it's not a bait card because it's just the first count of my storm count, right? And a lot of it is just like cracking, eggs or mana rocks or anything like that to just generate a bunch of mana. You start to play rituals, right? If you're playing Grixis and you start playing rituals, people know exactly what's going on.
Why are you just like? Why are you doing this right now?
Because you don't play rituals in basically any other deck, right? And so I'm playing, Dark Ritual, Seething Song, anything that I can to just get as much mana as possible.
Yeah.
And then I start cantrip over and over again, back into ritual, more cantrips, and then tendrils, and I hit you.
Yeah,
and the nice thing about tendrils as a win con is that it gains you life. So even if you can't kill them just yet,
you didn't quite get there.
You're close, and so a couple great.
But that disparity becomes massive.
Yeah, and like how Drew was saying at the very beginning, where combo decks, they got to kill that turn. So as soon as you start someone off, it doesn't matter if they know you're playing a storm deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, my goal is to kill you now.
Yeah,
I don't care if you know, right?
Yeah.
And so like if I'm not playing against a blue deck, I don't give a damn what you have. I am going to combo off and I'm going to kill you. If I'm playing against a blue deck,
then I'll pay attention, but I'm still going to kill you.
But then I'm throwing out a bait spell, right? And it's just like, okay, this is your one chance to stop this. Otherwise, I'm storming off.
I was going to say, and like you said when we were talking about control, when you have those decisions to make, if you have that counter spell and you see someone play that card, you have to know that I can't let that resolve or I lose this game. You may not lose this turn. You may not lose next turn, but you will lose this game.
Yeah, and like one of the, I think, probably my favorite deck that I've kind of messed with in Canadian Highlander was the Storm deck, and it was just a degenerate
Which
deck.
Storm? Is it the Doomsday?
No,
Storm?
It was like traditional Storm. Actually, was it the Doomsday? No, it was traditional Storm, but like you have like Black Lotus for your Moxen or something like that.
Right.
And as soon as you crack Lotus, for triple black, it's just like, oh,
You're like,
yeah, I'm gonna win.
yeah, like you do that, and like as soon as somebody sees that, they're like, I need to stop whatever's coming. Like,
I don't care what it is. Counterspell.
Yeah, I've got a pseudo storm Joyra, the what like Captain Cheerio cat.
Yeah, it's
sort of
as close to
EDH deck
Storm as you can possibly get without saying the words.
Yeah, I don't have any storm cards in there, but you basically
Just the
chain as
wonder
many 0 drops into Aetherflex Reservoir or Phyrexian Crawler, just pinging everybody for a bunch of damage. But as soon as Joyra hits the battlefield or one of those cards, everyone's like, oh, he's about to go off. Even though I'm nowhere near close to going off.
Do you have Walking Ballista in that deck?
Not yet.
I should have never sold mine.
I know. Joyra's good where she is. Like,
That's
I'd rather make a new
actually
deck.
one of the things that kind of is interesting about combo is that once you assemble the right pieces, it's so difficult, and I don't know how it is in EDH because I'm kind of new to combo in EDH, is that I don't know how easy it is to change out pieces because you work so hard to get these pieces, or somebody else has. Like you could just net deck into a deck, and it's about playing the pieces correctly that matters. So I don't know how easy it is to be like, oh, this could be a new card. Because for other decks, it's like, oh yeah, I can easily swap 1-to-1. But with these combo with decks, it matters so much what's in your deck. So every single deck that I've made, at least in EDH that I have Storm, and I've got 2 or 3 decks that I've got in the works, and every single one of them has this specific category that I just call Protect the Storm. Yeah. Because you absolutely need to. And I know we're going on a massively long tangent about combo here and Storm, but it really kind of showcases the difficulty of assembling these pieces, and people have this massive just hate boner for Storm, for combo in general. Yeah. And to assemble them and make the right decision of when to go off is something that I think a lot of people undervalue. They really kind of depreciate what it is to play these decks, to be able to go off correctly, to make the right decisions at the right times. There's a lot that goes into it. Whereas, an aggro deck, your decision is attack. Yes, I do attack. Burn spell. Creature or face?
Face.
Yeah.
For sure.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I think
every once in a while,
all of us have gotten a lot more comfortable with combos in the past probably year or so, because none of us used to ever play combos. We used to be pretty against it.
Like Storm was like the closest thing, and that was only online. I never played it in the group because it seemed like an unfun thing to do against a group of 3, right? Like, hey, I'm going to end the game on my own. You guys don't really get to contribute to it.
Yeah, and I think just all of us building combos, we've added answers to more combos because of it, and just everyone responds. So if you can actually get your combo off, it's like, okay, sick. All right, let's start another game.
As a resident Golgari player, I'm going to go out on a limb and just say that the people who play Control Blue and Control Blue and White are, in my opinion, the most skilled Magic players, which I think is why I hang back from those strategies. I really want to get into it because I feel like it'll make me a better Magic player, but it's just there's so many decisions you have to be able to make.
You have to know everything in your deck, I have to know everything in my deck. You got to know all the answers.
To go along with what Garion's saying there, as someone who's like delved into the control strategies and what it is to be those, the best way to beat a control player is to be playing the decks that they are playing, because you know the decisions that they have to make and you know when to force a bad decision.
Yeah.
And that's something that is so like, I say it like that as if it's easy, right? But that is such a massively difficult thing to do, because theoretically there's an infinite number of cards that you could be potentially playing, and I know that I say infinite and there's 18,000 cards in Magic or whatever, and obviously there's not an infinite amount, but
the combos of those,
the decision and the combination therein, like, it's so difficult to make sure that you're always making the correct decision.
Yeah, but I don't think it's possible to always make the correct decision.
Agreed. But before we continue on this discussion, we've got some beers here.
We almost don't have any beers here because
I've been enjoying mine. I just gave Cory, I think, the last of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think your beer is the best one here.
Oh, I don't get me wrong. I loved the Kiwanda when I was in Oregon. It was,
you got it from the tap.
Yeah, I mean, okay. If you have it from the tap, obviously, I think every beer is gonna be better if you have it straight from the teat, as Cory is saying here.
It's the teat of the beer mother.
I mean, the only one I haven't had from the tap is the one that I actually have, which I think is the best beer here.
It would probably be delicious out of the tap, though.
I mean, the Deschutes was a fantastic beer. It was like nice, slightly floral sweetness to it. The aroma is terrific, and like a nice kind of hazy little pilsner.
It's a little rough going from the Ninkasi stout to the Deschutes and back.
Oh, I disagree.
But you're not going that way.
Fruity texture. Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, I'm
going back to the stout. That's hard.
To that.
Yeah,
it's just like
coming from the stout to the pilsner here. It's like a little fruity sweetness to it, more fruity than floral, but that's a lovely beer. Honestly, like that is like perfectly drinking any time of the year. You can always have that.
Yeah, I think this one's relatively new because I've never seen it before until a couple months ago.
Oh, so they used to only make that and ship it around Oregon.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense because
when I got that one, they said. I asked them, I was like, okay, what is the Oregon staple? What is the thing that I can only get here? And they said, Deschutes.
Yeah, that's really good.
The can doesn't look like anything else. Like, it's really weird.
It's a cool one. It's a collector's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but it's really good.
And then
I like it.
Garion, you got the Kiwanda?
Yep, with a pre-prohibition cream ale. And I think if you're inexperienced with beer, you'd expect it to look a little different thinking cream. It's not really a flavor that's cream, it's the texture of this beer. Like going from the Deschutes to the Prohibition Cream Ale, it feels thicker, even though it's probably not really. It's not even a hazy beer.
Yeah, and for as far as like cream ales go, hopefully I'll have the Drew's Brews Instagram post up. We'll have another cream ale that is, for me, it is like the pivotal cream ale in that it takes a cream soda and makes it like the adult or alcoholic or whatever kind of version you want, the beer version of.
It's not the
soda.
Huckleberry cream.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's a nice flavorful cream ale that takes the cream soda to the adult level.
Yeah,
and this is different from that. It has like the cream is more on the texture, as you said at the beginning of the episode, and I mean the flavor is just nice.
It's
almost
more
like a blonde ale.
Wheat and malt and less fruit and floral like the Deschutes beer. And the all-star of these beers, I think we all kind of agree.
I mean, I don't know if I'd say all-star, but it's definitely the best beer.
I mean, all of these are really good, but I think this one is definitely the best out of these.
I mean, I think because it is bitter, but it's also sweet because it's a stout. I think that really helps it to just push it over the edge in the tasty category.
Yeah, and it's not like it's vanilla extract. I feel like they actually used vanilla bean because it just tastes stronger and more
subtle, but not.
It's like super potent, but also subtle at the same time.
Yeah,
like it's just infused throughout the whole.
Yeah, it's just well infused. Like I said, to me, it is the first thing I taste, and I was gonna say the last thing I taste, but the coffee on the aftertaste just like rides out for a long time. Which normally I don't really like the bitterness and stuff that coffee kind of beers bring, but this is nice.
I think the vanilla smooths it out. It's not as sharp.
Yeah, and like there's vanilla plants all over the label. Like they're not messing around when it comes to the vanilla.
Yeah, it's
like,
just a well-balanced beer. I like that.
I mean, I will always take the dark beer over the light beer. That's just who I am. And so when I saw this one, I was like, I'm not gonna not get this.
Yeah, like I love everything that Deschutes ever makes. But when the oatmeal stout's better, you know it's good.
Yeah, that actually is saying a lot.
That's a testament.
Deschutes is a goddamn good beer. Mm-hmm. And when I had that one, just chilling at the brewery, I was just like, yeah, I'll get some of this for Cory because I don't know if he's had this. And I mean, Black Butte Porter on tap is still going to be better, but that's just me.
Oh yeah. Sean actually bought this months ago, and he'd never seen it. So he works at a grocery store, and so he knows everything that's ever there. And so basically the first day this was there, he's like, "Oh, I've never seen this beer," and he grabbed it. And we had no idea it was Deschutes Brewing, even though it says Deschutes.
Yeah,
right. We were just like, "Oh, it's a cool can."
Yeah, it was so funny being at the brewery
so
because the way that the bartender Sean was there, he was just hilarious in that every single time he's like, "Oh man, have you tried the Deschutes?" I was just like, I'm here, I'm trying. And like I've got Black Butte Porter in my hand. It's like,
why are you saying?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what are you talking about? And he like points, and they got this chalkboard just above all of the taps and everything like that. And he's just like, no, Deschutes. I was like, shouldn't you just say Deschutes?
Why are you pronouncing that wrong? You work here.
No, but
what?
But like even when I read it, I'm just like, yeah, it's Deschutes from Deschutes. Like great, but they're like heavily emphasis Deschutes.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you know what? I'll fuck with it. Like I'll work with this. Like it's fun. Tried it, so good.
Well, what do you think, guys? I think that's probably a good rundown of the most basic archetypes. Obviously, like we were talking about with tribal and things like that, you can get into the minutia of the
let's dive into that just a little bit here, right? Let's talk about EDH specifically. There's always, ways that we can talk about EDH and ways that we will, but when it comes to EDH, I think that most of the decks that we're looking at, they're not really tempo, right? You got the Voltron, they're there sometimes, but I think most of it is just value, and when we think of value, mid-range.
You kind of have to, because you're already at the very beginning of the game so outpaced in your resources. That's 3-on-1. You don't always have to think of it that way, but realistically it is.
I think about it as I get there's 3 turns to my every 1.
Yeah.
Right? And if you think about it as a heads up, they just took 2 extra turns on you, right? Yeah. And they're playing 2 other decks.
And that's huge.
Yeah, and that's why I think these archetypes don't really work in EDH. There's like, you have sort of general... I think that control
as we talk about like
things,
generalized things, and I think that the further away from the middle you go, the harder it is to play. Like aggressive decks, I think that we can just categorize Infect in there, right? Like Infect is an aggro strategy.
Absolutely,
and
you have to be.
I mean, it could be theoretically like creature combo or something along those lines. Because you could kill somebody in 1 turn and Triumph for the Hordes. You're trying to kill everyone in 1 turn. But I think that for the most part, Infect is going to be an aggro style strategy, right? You're just going to continue to attack. You're trying to get your opponents to 10 Infect counters instead. And we've had our discussion on Infect. We all know how that works. I don't want to go into that too far. But I think that's probably the only viable aggro strategy, because normal aggro strategies, you have to count to 120.
Yeah, I think it's just you sort of have to be in the middle and on the ends at the same time, because you want fast decks work if they get everybody at the same time, but you also want to build your deck so that it's good at the beginning and good at the end.
Yeah, I think this is where like the limited resources quadrant theory just becomes such a massive boon if you're using it in limited, because all of a sudden you have this idea that every single card that you play has to be good at the beginning of the game, middle of the game, late game, and if your opponent's ahead of you or behind, whatever happens to be, you need to have your resources be able to match the state of the board.
Yeah, and so you sort of have to take a lot of these themes that we've talked about and just sort of just weave them between, like, you can have aggro parts of your deck where you just swing out at people and get value, but then like you want late game stuff where you can lock people down or just have big threats, and then you might have a combo in the deck which you can assemble over time.
Yeah,
but it's really hard to just do one of those things.
And that's why I really like to just lump most EDH decks into mid-range, because what does mid-range have? Efficient creatures, the planeswalkers, the best removal that you can have, and your colors, like hand attack, probably not as much, but like you have the best of the best.
Yeah, if you're only allowed one copy, you got to make it good.
You got to make it count, exactly. And so I think that's why EDH I would generally just consider in the mid-range category. But obviously you can do combo. You can do
whatever you want.
But I think that's the reason why we're all so just afflicted with the EDHism. It's just like we can do whatever we want and we can make it work because it's.
I have blue. I could put an expropriate in this deck. Fuck it, let's do it.
Let's go mono blue aggro. Fuck it, let's go.
Dude, flying man, it's a cool deck.
That is true.
The new Sphinx that just got printed is blue aggro.
True.
A Tempsies?
Yeah, you just want lots of cards in hand and you have
to.
That's true.
It's true. It's almost mono.
Weird.
We gotta try it.
Mono blue aggro / combo.
Yeah,
that's cool. I think Michael's gonna build a deck on that, and hopefully we get him on the episode here sooner rather than later. I've already got the beers sorted for him, so he better get here. But that's gonna wrap it up for us here today.
As always, don't drink and drive. Be safe.
Yeah, if you're underage, don't fuck with the stuff. Like, as much as we enjoy, drinking and playing Magic, there's a reason why there's an age limit on it. Like
I didn't even drink till I was 25, and I'm totally fine. Worked out. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to be hitting you up with another Drew's Brews every single week as we release these episodes. Drew tends to drink off the show just about as much as he drinks on the show. So we've got.
I drink literally once a week, guys. Okay,
it's just 20 beers at a time.
Friday night.
No, I think it's actually Wednesday night usually.
Wasted Wednesday.
Either way, we've got a lot of beers that we don't get on the show, so we want to at least let you know what.
Honestly,
it was like.
You guys are lucky that these beers have lasted as long as they have. That's true. All right, so consider that.
Yeah,
I literally had to stash the others in a different place so that I didn't drink them.
So you'd forget.
There's just too many good beers.
And we want to hear
limit
about
them to
right?
3 per
Absolutely.
If you guys have cool beers, honestly, they don't have to be beers. Like we enjoy our liquor as much as we do our beer. If it's flavorful, if we can make a mixed drink out of it, that's enjoy. But there's so much good stuff out there that honestly we're just ignorant of because we haven't been exposed to it. So please let us know what you're drinking. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
Yep. We're also on, obviously, YouTube. Hopefully, you guys are watching most of these episodes on YouTube at least at some point because we talk about a lot of cards. We want you to be able to see them all.
We're either at UUD Podcast or at Untap Upkeep Drink.
And we've noticed that there's a lot of you guys in the UK and New Zealand. Like, we want to know all those otherworldly beers. We want to know all the good shit. So just hit us up anytime.
All the crazy imports.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, if there's something that that we can get.
If there's one thing we have to drink, hit us up.
Yeah, let us know.
Give us
we'll try and get it on.
Country of origin staples. So hopefully you guys are having good games and getting some real great Magic in. As always,
have fun.
But not too much.